planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Waymouth. Belinda, welcome. Welcome.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. How are you?
You start our day. You start our show. That's a big responsibility, Belinda, so let's not blow it. All right.
Okay.
All right. Now, I suppose that you want to start with what are massive and transformational, potentially, new policies regarding emissions in America and auto emissions and how that's going to affect the electric vehicle market and the ripple effects toward rolling back the carbon footprint of this country. I mean, it was pretty big what the EPA announced this week.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, to have, to say, look, by 2035, 2/3 of the vehicles sold have to be EVs. It's big because the biggest, carbon emission sector for the US, this is a huge geographical, enormous country, are our vehicle emissions. And so, yes, this is really big and great. I have to say my head is spinning a little bit. It just feels slightly Jekyll and Hyde to me. So he's dealing with the demand side. The demand for oil will go down with the more EVs that we have on the road, and in the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, he set up all this, incredible, tax breaks for industries, moving in the electric vehicle space, also for, consumers. There are going to be more charging stations. So that's all fantastic. But then we have what he just did with the supply side, where he increased, drilling and opened up all these leases in the Gulf of Mexico. And then we've got the Willow Project in Alaska. So, so it just feels slightly Jekyll and Hyde-ish to me because, there is so much supply in the world. We have way too, there's too much, the resource.
Yeah, the notion that there's a petroleum shortage or that there's a fuel shortage or an energy shortage worldwide is just you're saying is a false notion.
Yeah. There's tons of it out there, and we're not the only country who has all that, right below the soil or the sea, in the seabed. So it's really about, reducing demand, which obviously this move to increase, electric vehicles on the roads is, a step in the right direction. It just seems, that those two decisions sort of back to back don't make, any sense to me.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Well, I'll tell you how it makes sense in a moment. First, I'll tell you now how it makes sense, and then I'll post this comment, which I think addresses something that you want to probably get to anyway, which is infrastructure related. It makes sense because it's a political calculation. He's going to run for re-election, even if it's not Joe Biden. Democrats want to maintain the executive branch. They also want to do well in other elections. They don't want to be branded as the party of high oil prices, and Americans still don't understand that those oil projects like the Willow Project and the drilling off the Gulf, that'll have no effect on the price at the pump. But that disconnect is unfortunately just there. So what you end up with is this perception that the Democrats don't want to drill, and that's the reason you're paying so much, because of a supply issue. Now, the reality, of course, we know is that those millions of gallons, tens of millions of gallons, hundreds of millions of gallons end up on the spot market anyway. They're exported. It doesn't stay domestically. That's another issue. And even so, it'll take years to get this project underway. Meanwhile, we're defiling the environment, and these are all dirty fuels. Okay, so I'm wrapping up just to say this is politics, because on the one hand, he takes care of greenies like you and me who care about EVs and who care about building the infrastructure for more and more people to comfortably recharge those vehicles And yet, at the same time, the drill baby drill people, he throws them something by as you suggest, the leasing of the Gulf of Mexico and the new project in Alaska. That's what's going on there. It's politics, and it's awful because it's real. Not to mention, the Gulf of Mexico stuff. Was that the greatest disaster, the Deepwater Horizon, in the history of oil exploration? I believe so.
In the history of oil spills, it was, the biggest. I mean, it was terrible. And to open that up, and, when you think about the damage that was, wrought on the Louisiana coastline and what it did to the livelihoods of the people, the fishers there, the fisher people. They call them fishers now. I mean, it's just,
it's a myopic calculation. It's short-term calculation. Now, here is what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
Lori says, let me put my credibility glasses on so I can read her comment.
Yeah. Are we going to deal with the lack of infrastructure?
How are we going to deal with the lack of infrastructure, lack of battery components, lack of sustainable battery disposal? So Lori's asking a question that's asked by many, and it's a reasonable question to ask, which is great to put these limits down, great to put these goals out there, and great to put this law out there. But how are you possibly going to catch up with the infrastructure that's not yet ready for that kind of burden?
Well, the big thing, and you bring it up, and it's so true, Lori, the battery components, the lithium. How do we mine lithium in a sustainable and environmentally responsible way? Because that's really, a huge issue. And what's happening right now with lithium mining is it's not so great. But the industry is aware of that, and I have read and heard from experts this real we don't want to get rid of one dirty problem and replace it with another. So there is this real awareness. And the other thing is battery disposal. They are using batteries from EVs to store solar power. So, people are always like, oh, what's going to happen to my Prius battery? Well, they now have these warehouses filled with batteries from, old electric vehicles that have a second life as, to store solar energy that's created during the day, and then the energy is needed at night. So there is, there are recycling projects, that deal with those batteries out there. And it's just the question of, scaling up. And, we have to really, we know this is crunch time, and the other, thing I wanted to talk about today was, zoos as these, sort of arks of conservation. And it's one thing to, save animals by, having them in a zoo and having them safe. But we really have to deal with this terrible, sort of rapacious habitat destruction that's underway. And that's the thing that happens when we, keep drilling and open up more of the Gulf of Mexico and go in, to Alaska. And I know they're trying to keep that footprint small, but, we're in this mass extinction event with animals and with species we really need, all the pollinators, the insects, so we have to, to not be making the switch to EVs and to, and obviously, Lori, we have to do it in a completely sustainable and environmentally conscious way. I'm, really, really aware of that. Well,
the one thing I would just add to that, potentially, Belinda, the infrastructure associated with charging, associated with battery sourcing, reuse, all of that.
Yeah.
That will catch up. I know this is a weird thing to, perhaps conceive of, but that will catch up to policy. And here's what I mean. In the early days of the combustion engine, they used to say, well, how are you possibly going to fuel all of these combustion engines? There are no gas stations around. Okay. Well, gas stations went up because there was demand for it. Yeah. If there's demand for that electric charging station, it will follow policy. So I would say, Sadly, the growing pains can be painful, but the growing pains will ease, and eventually this will be a very well-oiled, if you'll pardon the expression, machine, and you will have infrastructure that will match the goal. I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah. And also because there's been, money has been set aside for that, in the Inflation Reduction Act. There are, there's billions going towards, recharging stations. And so, states, municipalities, can apply for that and then have that money so that they can put in those, the recharging stations. And yeah, with every new technology, absolutely, there are going to be growing pains. But we can't wait any longer. And when the EPA and Biden announced this week, this puts us on a par with what the EU are doing. They're aiming for, I think it's 58% of all new vehicles sold by 2030 will be, EVs. So ours actually, is a little bit, ahead of that, at 67%. And, it's what we have to do. We have to do this. We have to get off, we can't keep putting CO2 up into the atmosphere. I mean, there's a new technology coming out of one of the UCs right now. It's called sea change, and it's about going out into the ocean and sucking the CO2 out of the water, because the ocean has sucked up 90% of the heat we've put into the atmosphere. It's sucked up a third of the CO2. The oceans are acidifying. They are, heating up. They are becoming absolutely inhospitable for the species that live in them. We're having these toxic algal blooms. The coral is bleaching. I mean, the ice is melting. We've got to get on it. And this is how we do it. So, I do hear the concerns, and they're real. But we have to find a way to do it, and we have to,
it's true. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I'm seeing so much of this, mining all those rare earth metals is devastating to the environment. How are we going to get the infrastructure? This is there aren't enough precious metals. There's a scarcity. I see all of these things. This is exactly the kind of conversation that, as I was saying before, they were having as the combustion engine was catching on, and so many people as a consumer product were driving these cars. And I see trolls in there going, well, let's just go back to horse and buggies then, Mark. Well, I mean, that gets you nowhere. You have to evolve energy consumption to another place. Energy consumption, if you look back through history, and then I'll shut up. I do want to touch on the zoos, which you had mentioned you wanted to talk about. Energy consumption has always evolved. It's the most revolutionary evolution within human society that you can find. If you go back, even thousands of years, the way energy has been transformed. And so this is the next moment. I mean, there was a moment when they came up with this fracking. Remember, the moment they actually came up with it, they realized, oh my God, we can get even more out of the ground than we used to get. It was used to be just stick a pipe in and pump it out. Then they came up with this chemical process. I think it's a loathsome thing. There's so much toxicity associated with it, but that changed, and now it's changing again. All I'm saying is that everybody hang on. There will be an evolution here. I think it's an inflection moment, and I think that it's great that you pointed out, because it's just that. It's a potentially revolutionary kind of moment in America.
Yes, yeah, and I do, when you talk about, the sort of the myopia, and I mean, we don't like change. Change is super hard, and that's the thing. We're being asked to change the way we do things. But when you think about all the pollution-related deaths, all the asthma, all the people, is it 67,000 people in the US who die every year because of polluted air, all the kids who have asthma, all the terrible cancer rates of people who live anywhere near oil refineries. I mean, they're just, there has to be a better way, and this is the better way, and we have to move, towards it. And it sort of ties into this, what's happening with these zoos, I'm going to switch gears now.
Yeah, please. I know we only have another minute, so go ahead.
Yeah. Zoos is these sort of beacons of conservation because animals are so, under pressure with habitat destruction that zoos now doing these incredibly it's very interventionist, where taking a tiger or a gorilla. I mean, the San Diego Zoo Safari Park actually moves the gorillas and the elephants around so that they can, to keep the genetic material mixed up and, mate them with animals in other zoos. But now we're talking about, oh no, we're going to be doing, it's going to be artificial insemination and in vitro. And, in some ways, I don't know if you, I'll post the story about the tiger, who's, they're hoping is pregnant with cubs right now at the Smithsonian Zoo. But what this is sort of, it's an amazing thing that zoos are able to, there she is, Nikita. So it's an amazing thing that zoos are, which I used to think were ghastly and part of the problem, but are now this amazing thing where animals are, being protected. They're in this haven. I mean, it is a, sort of a prison. But it also shows that we've got this incredible preference for technological fixes over actually just changing, the way we do things. Because what we really need to do is, conserve their natural habitat so they can be, mating in the wild. And but that said, we had an amazing success story with the California condor. We were down to only 22 of those birds in the wild. We, captured them. They got a breeding program going on, and now there are 300 in the wild. And so, that was, intervention and then release. But the thing with these tigers and these gorillas and these elephants, if we don't conserve their habitat, there's going to be nowhere to release them to. And
that's right.
We don't want a world where we only have these exotic, incredible, huge mammals alive in zoos. And so that's a reason to not drill,
Well, that's the big issue. I mean, it's great that zoos are taking this disposition toward preserving these creatures that we essentially have slaughtered. I mean, we've either actually slaughtered them or we've so eliminated their habitat that they die as a result of what we've done. I believe, Belinda, maybe you can check this or somebody can check this.
Google it.
The wild animals, wild tigers, I believe they're only 2% of the population on Earth that's actually wild anymore. Maybe that's a low number, but I'm pretty sure that may be close to right. In other words, we've really eliminated most of the wild animals on Earth.
I was talking about that on the show a couple.
Maybe
of weeks
that's where I heard it.
You got it from me, baby. 94% of biodiversity on Earth is us or our domesticated animals.
Thank you.
Our cows and our sheep and our chickens, and it's crazy that we're down to this tiny percentage of wild animals left. And, that was the thing that, sent me back to school to do an environmental science degree when, my daughter was 3 years old. I was like, I don't want my kid only being able to see a polar bear in a zoo, and so, So this is really, it's game time. And so to all our listeners, I get it. We're in growing pains. It's hard. Change is difficult. There are a lot of problems associated with, this massive switch to EV vehicles. I mean, we really need mass public transport. I mean, we need to all be on, buses and trains. I just was in North Carolina and I was in Wilmington and, there is everybody in their trucks. And I'm like, everything is so spread out. I don't see how you could have a bus or a train system here, and that's the problem. But, Tokyo is becoming a completely walking, biking city, bye-bye cars. And we need to do that where we can.
Yeah, we're in a place that has never really celebrated that, meaning America. But, I mean, we do need to evolve. We also don't need to rush certain things. Other things we do need to rush. So it's a balancing act. And I think they'll, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back on some level. I'm seeing all of the comments and I'll address some of them after. I know you have a deadline, so I'm going to let you go. She joins us on Thursdays, normally at 11:35, but I'm glad we could accommodate today. Belinda Waymouth, everybody. Waymouth. Bye-bye, Belinda. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
More
Is the planet stupid? No. Is the planet stupid?
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.